What if I told you that every economist for the past century has been fundamentally wrong about how the economy works? That they've been building theories on a foundation that violates the most basic laws of physics. In 1971, a Romanian mathematician turned economist named Nicholas Georgescu-Roegen published a book that would shake the very foundations of economic thinking. The Entropy Law and the economic process didn't just challenge economic theory, it demolished it with the cold, hard reality of thermodynamics. The book was so revolutionary that it caught the attention of world leaders. Colombia's President Gustavo Petro, himself an economist, has spoken about how deeply this work influenced his understanding of economic policy and environmental sustainability. This isn't just another economics book. This is the work that predicted our current environmental crisis decades before climate change became mainstream. And today, we're going to explore why Georgescu-Roegen's insights are more relevant than ever. Nicholas Georgescu-Roegen wasn't your typical economist. Born in Romania in 1906, he started as a mathematician and statistician before economics captured his attention. But here's what made him dangerous to the establishment. He never forgot his scientific training. While other economists were busy creating elegant mathematical models that ignored physical reality, Georgescu-Roegen kept asking uncomfortable questions. Where does all this economic growth actually come from? What happens to the materials we use? And most importantly, can this really go on forever? His unique perspective came from being an outsider. He saw what others missed because he wasn't trapped in the echo chamber of traditional economic thinking. He looked at the economy not as an abstract system of numbers and theories, but as a physical process that must obey the same laws that govern everything else in the universe. Here's the shocking truth. Mainstream economics treats the economy as a perpetual motion machine. Think about it. Traditional economic models show money and goods flowing in perfect circles. Consumers buy from producers. Producers pay workers. Workers buy from consumers. Round and round it goes, growing forever with no beginning, no end, and no limits. But Georgescu-Roegen asked a simple question that shattered this fantasy. Where do the materials come from, and where do they go? Every iPhone, every car, every building starts as raw materials extracted from the earth. Iron ore becomes steel, oil becomes plastic, trees become paper, and after we use these products, they become waste. Broken phones in landfills, rusted cars in junkyards. The materials don't magically return to their original state. This isn't just an environmental concern, it's a fundamental flaw in how we understand economics. We've been modeling the economy as a closed loop when it's actually a one-way street. Materials flow from the earth, through our economic system, and out as waste and pollution. This is where Georgescu-Roegen introduced economists to their worst nightmare. The second law of thermodynamics, also known as the Entropy Law. Don't worry, I'll make this simple. Entropy is basically a measure of disorder, or more precisely, the unavailability of energy to do work. The Entropy Law states that in any isolated system, entropy always increases over time. What does this mean in plain English? Things fall apart. Energy spreads out. Order becomes disorder. And this process is irreversible. Think of it this way. You can easily turn a tree into a table, but you can't turn a table back into a tree. You can burn coal to generate electricity, but you can't take the smoke and heat and recreate the original coal. High-quality, concentrated energy becomes low-quality, dispersed energy. Now, here's the bombshell. Our economy is subject to this same law. Every economic process involves transforming low-entropy inputs, like coal, oil, iron ore, into high-entropy outputs, like heat, waste, and pollution. We're constantly converting useful materials and energy into less useful forms. The economy isn't a perpetual motion machine. It's an entropy machine, constantly consuming order and producing disorder. Georgescu-Roegen revealed that all economic activity is fundamentally about entropy transformation. We take low-entropy inputs from nature and transform them into economic goods, inevitably producing high-entropy waste in the process. Consider a simple example. Baking bread. You start with organized inputs, flour, water, yeast, energy for heating. Through the baking process, you create bread which serves human needs, but you also create heat that dissipates into the environment, waste products, and eventually the bread itself will decay. This applies to everything. Manufacturing a car requires metals, plastics, energy, all low-entropy inputs. The car serves us for years, but eventually it rusts, breaks down, and becomes scrap metal. The useful organized materials become scattered, oxidized waste. But here's what makes this terrifying for traditional economists. This process has limits. The Earth contains finite amounts of low-entropy materials. Once we've converted them all to high-entropy waste, what then? Georgescu-Roegen wasn't just describing an environmental problem. He was describing the fundamental constraint on economic growth that economists had been ignoring. The economy can't grow forever because it's limited by the availability of low-entropy inputs and the planet's capacity to absorb high-entropy outputs. This leads us to Georgescu-Roegen's most controversial conclusion. Infinite economic growth on a finite planet is impossible. Every mainstream economist will tell you that growth is not just possible, but necessary. GDP must grow, productivity must increase, markets must expand, but Georgescu-Roegen showed that this belief violates basic physical laws. Think about what exponential growth means. If the economy grows at just 3% per year, it doubles every 23 years. In a century, it would be 16 times larger. In 2 centuries, 256 times larger. Where would all the materials come from? Where would all the waste go? The answer is, they can't. The Earth's resources are finite. Its capacity to absorb waste is limited. At some point, we run out of low-entropy inputs or overwhelm the planet's ability to handle high-entropy outputs. This isn't pessimism, it's physics. You can't argue with thermodynamics any more than you can argue with gravity. But here's what makes this insight so profound. Georgescu-Roegen wrote this in 1971, when environmental concerns were barely on the radar. He predicted our current crisis not through environmental analysis, but through rigorous application of physical laws to economic thinking. Today, more than 50 years later, we're living through exactly what Georgescu-Roegen predicted. Climate change, resource depletion, pollution, biodiversity loss. These aren't separate problems. They're all symptoms of the same fundamental issue, an economic system that ignores entropy. We're witnessing the collision between exponential economic growth and planetary boundaries. The low-entropy fossil fuels that powered the Industrial Revolution are causing climate chaos. The minerals we extract for technology are becoming scarcer and more expensive to obtain. The waste we produce is overwhelming natural systems. But Georgescu-Roegen's insights go beyond environmental concerns. They explain why recycling, while important, can't solve our fundamental problem. Recycling requires energy, and that energy comes from low-entropy sources. The recycling process itself produces entropy. We can slow down the transformation, but we can't stop it. This also explains why technological solutions alone won't save us. Yes, we can become more efficient, but efficiency improvements are subject to diminishing returns. Eventually, we hit physical limits that no amount of innovation can overcome. The implications are staggering. If Georgescu-Roegen is right, and the evidence suggests he is, then our entire economic system needs fundamental restructuring. We can't base an economy on infinite growth in a finite world. So, what's the solution? Georgescu-Roegen didn't offer easy answers, but he pointed toward what he called a steady-state economy, one that operates within planetary boundaries rather than trying to transcend them. This doesn't mean economic stagnation. It means shifting focus from quantity to quality, from growth to development, from having more to being more. It means designing economic systems that work with natural cycles rather than against them. Some economists have taken up this challenge. Herman Daly, Kate Raworth, and others have built on Georgescu-Roegen's foundation to develop new economic models that respect physical limits. The concept of degrowth in wealthy nations is gaining traction among policymakers, but the resistance is enormous. Our entire financial system is built on the assumption of endless growth. Political careers depend on promising economic expansion. Corporate profits require increasing sales. Georgescu-Roegen understood this. He knew that accepting the Entropy Law's implications would require not just new economic theories, but a fundamental shift in how we think about progress, success, and the good life. The Entropy Law and the economic process isn't just a book. It's a wake-up call. Georgescu-Roegen showed us that we can't cheat physics, no matter how sophisticated our economic models become. His work remains as relevant today as it was in 1971, perhaps more so. As we face climate change, resource depletion, and ecological collapse, we're finally confronting the reality he described. An economy that violates the laws of thermodynamics is ultimately doomed to failure. The question isn't whether Georgescu-Roegen was right. The evidence is all around us. The question is whether we'll heed his warning before it's too late. What do you think? Are we ready to build an economy that works with nature rather than against it? Let me know in the comments below. For more, don't forget to like and follow.